What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and another full mix walkthrough. Today we're looking at a freestyle by Jafro, and it's actually part of the Hardest Bars series on Link Up TV. So you can see the video right here out on Link Up TV's channel. It's also out on all digital platforms if you want to go and check that out too, and links will be in the description for both the video and the song. So I'm going to play part of the song now so you can get a feel for how it's sounding and also how the video is looking. And then we're going to talk about kind of how I went about this, the kind of philosophy and the thinking behind the mix before we dive into the full walkthrough. So here we go with the Hardest Bars freestyle by Jafro.
All of my wins have paid for my bills. All of my failures made me the man. I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror it looks like chest day, but in all fairness I just did squats. In your mirror you trust in flesh, but same way how you ain't got no guts.
Okay, so hopefully you get a feel for that. It's a kind of a grind freestyle. It's just one long verse over this really kind of 808 heavy beat. And I mixed the beat as well as the vocals on this. And this is the Logic project right here. As you'll see, most of this is instrumental. So all of this here is the instrumental. And then down here is the vocals. Now it's literally just 2 takes, so 2 recordings for the verse. There's no ad-libs and no BVs for this verse, and that's why I've added a number of things here to kind of add some sauce and some spice to the vocals. But before we get to the vocals, I just want to talk about the instrumental a little bit. As you heard on that little preview, it's very 808 heavy, very bass driven, so that was almost the main focus when mixing this, to make sure that 808 is coming through really strong, coming through with a lot of sub, but also coming through on smaller speakers that can't reproduce that sub. So we'll get to that in a while. The drums just kind of complementing that. The drums sounded pretty good when they came to me, so I didn't do a whole lot on them. The instruments, it's just a case of making them fit around the vocal. You know, with a freestyle like this, obviously the main focus is the vocal. So it's all about getting the vocal up front, in your face, loud, pretty loud, strong, and then building everything else in and around that. So going back to what I said about this vocal having no background vocals, no ad-libs, I really wanted to add a number of things to this to kind of spice it up. So you see all these channels here are effects, some subtle, some not so subtle, but different things to kind of add spice and sauce to a song like this when you don't have anything like ad-libs and backgrounds to kind of fill the spaces. I'm going to get to that in a little while. So if you're only interested in the vocals for this song, please skip ahead on the chapters. You'll be able to see just the vocal treatment. But before that, I am going to walk you through the instrumental. I'm going to play part of the instrumental now, so let's mute out these vocals. And we'll just play this part of the instrumental from the intro kind of into the verse, so you can get a sense of how it's sounding. This is fully mixed. And then we'll take a look at what I did. So that makes up the majority of the instrumental, but there is some other parts down here, some other instrumentation comes in, as you can see. So I'll just play from around here. Yeah, so obviously the main thing here is the 808, the bass. It's coming through really strong. It's a main driver of the instrumental and the song. So that right here is the most important part in a way in the beat, but also there's some really nice instrumentation going on here, some pianos, some saxes. And it was about kind of building them in with plenty of width and space to leave space for the vocal. The other thing you probably notice is there's various things in the beat that kind of provide like a big impact. So every 4 or 8 or 16 bars, various parts throughout the song, there's kind of things that really smash you in the face, you know. There's various effects shots and also parts of the instrumentation as well, which provide a big kind of impact. So those parts are really nice as well. And I kind of did things in the vocal as well to kind of go with that and to match up with that, which you'll see later on when we get to the vocal. So let's start with the drums. And I'm not going to go through in detail like exactly what I did, because as you'll see, there's not a whole lot on these. It's just little touches. Yeah, so on the kick here, I'm adding a little bit of saturation here with the Shep's Omni channel. and a little bit of punch here in the kind of 60 hertz range, reducing a little bit of mud as well on the kick. This rim shot here, I needed to brighten it up a little bit, so I used the Sheps Omni channel once again and the Ozone Exciter. As you'll see, just adding some kind of grit and some punch to that mid-range there. So just adding more presence and more sharpness to that. The shaker. So I use the Saturn here by Fab Filter to kind of add some grit and more of a kind of lo-fi kind of sound to this shaker. I didn't like how the high end was catching my ear when it was mixed in with the vocals, so I used this here. And this is a good trick. Instead of EQing, sometimes I use saturation like this to kind of take away the edges or the sharpness of a sound. I think this is adding a nice touch here. Yeah, it just kind of softens it nicely. I just liked it, and I did the same thing here on these open hats. Not a major change there. Yeah, so this channel here is one of the things I was talking about, where there's just various things throughout the mix that just add punch and impact every so often, and I didn't do anything really with this. I reduced a little bit of the low end just so it's not colliding kind of thing with the kick. Nothing on there really. Now there is other parts of the drums here, kind of the intro part, and then some bits that come in later on throughout the song. Pretty straightforward stuff here. I've added some low end to this kind of boomy kick here. Like in this part of the song, there's nothing else taking up any low end, so there's no bass here. There's no other kick here, so I just wanted that to have a little bit more impact. And then similarly with the, like I showed you earlier with the rim shot, I've added some saturation here on this clap, just to bring out some more high end and kind of grit on there. You see how using saturation, you know, I could use an EQ for this and it might do a similar job, but adding this saturation, it just, I don't know, it just does it in a much nicer way for me. When working on claps and snares, I always like to try adding some tape saturation like this, and it just kind of sweetens it up in a way that I prefer to EQ a lot of the time. You see what this decapitator is doing to that hat? It was very sharp and very trebly, and this is just adding some grit into it. Very nice. And as you see, these parts come in around here as well in the track toward the end where everything's building up, like the other instruments are coming in. So the producer brought in more things here on the percussion as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that when these drums came in, they already sounded pretty good. And this is just little touches, just all these little touches just add up to a big change by the end of it, you know. And that's why I don't want to go through every single thing, because they're all kind of small changes. As you see, there's some level shifting as well going on here, of course, as I saw fit. I've also added a little touch of reverb to some of these sounds, slight touch of kind of room reverb to this. Very, very subtle, but it just smooths things out a little bit. So we'll get onto this 808 now, and as I explained earlier in the video, this is really the kind of driving force behind the song, as it often is with these kind of beats. It really wants to play a role of kind of leading the beat, but also rumbling under there and creating that real nice bottom end. So the First thing I did was went to the R bass, and this is a great plugin if you've got a bass sound or a lower frequency sound, even a kick. Sometimes I use this on kick. Anything with some low frequency in it, but not enough of it, or not enough as low down as you want it. This is what I draw for. And this is a great plugin I've been using for many years. So I'll play this with and without, and you'll see just how much extra weight this adds in the sub frequencies. So yeah, you see just how much extra weight that's adding down there in the real lower frequencies, and it's really simple to use. Just select a low frequency like this. Sometimes I'm on 70, sometimes I'm on 60, 50. Play around with this, whichever works best, and then just adjust the intensity. I've got this down at minus 7.5. I could have gone lower, could have gone higher with it, but this is where it felt about right. After that, I've got an EQ, and all I'm doing here is just removing some of the high end. This bass had a little kind of rattle going on up here and a slight bit of distortion, which is nice, but I just wanted to reduce it slightly. Yeah, so it's just filtering out that little bit of high end and that little bit of distortion that the bass came with. So the last thing I'm doing to this 808 here is just using the track spacer by Waves Factory, and this is just acting as a sidechain compression from the kick. So anytime that the kick hits, it's kind of ducking a little bit, but only right down in the real low frequencies. So let me show you what this is doing with the kick on as well. Yeah, so this is just hopefully buying me a little bit more headroom. You know, we don't want two things hitting at 50, 60 hertz right down there, which is eating up all your headroom. Low frequencies eat up headroom. So this is just helping to carve out the bass when that kick is hitting. And it hopefully, like I say, will give me a little bit more leeway in the mastering stage where I can bring up the level higher. The other part of the bass I wanted to mention is this reverse 808 here, which is basically like a build up to a drop. And I've done some cool stuff with this. So I'll show you what I did here. Yeah, so it's kind of like a build up to a drop. And I wanted to add a little bit more saturation to this, so I ran it through Saturn again. And just a few little bits of kind of drive going on to bring out some extra harmonics out of this. So let me play this before and after. Let me turn off this tremolo as well. So pretty subtle, but I think it just helps to kind of, once everything else is in the arrangement here, it can be hard to hear this, and I just wanted it to catch the ear a little bit more. So I added that little bit of saturation to bring some more kind of mid and highs out of that. And then I've run it through this tremolo, so it's kind of oscillating between the speakers. Yeah, so when it's in with the rest of the arrangement, I think it's really cool. And that's all I really did to the bass parts of this, but those few things just really helped to bring it out and again, make it more of the focus of the song than it kind of already was, and make it worthy of being that real driving force behind the beat. Dive in now to the instruments, and again, I don't want to go into too much of the technicalities of what I did on each channel. As you'll see, there'll be a number of volume things, obviously. A little bit of compression here on some parts, so we've got these piano parts here. Literally just compressing them a little bit. I've added a little bit of high end here as well. And the reason I'm using a lot of this Sheps Omni channel, by the way, is it's just a really cool plugin for when I want to quickly be able to access some saturation, some EQ, some compression, you know, and it's nice sound, really nice sounding parts as well. So this is just a very simple plugin. It's got everything all in one place. And by the way, links in the description for all of the waves plugins that I'm using in this track too. Same with this piano here. It was just a little bit too dynamic for me. It was sticking out too much and the quieter parts were getting drowned out a little bit. So I used that compression to just kind of keep it all up front, but also tame some of the louder parts. We've got this sax here. A really nice part of the beat actually. So all I've done on this is use the S1 imager to make it a little bit more wide, a little bit more spacious. Took out some of the rumble as well that was existing in there. Same with this sax. Also added a little bit of reverb to this as well. Really nice. Yeah, this is a really nice part of the beat that you maybe don't expect from a beat like this to have some really nice sax parts like that. But yeah, really cool. And I think the reverb really just helped to kind of put it in a nice space. Yeah, so I'm using Fresh Air here, which is a free plugin, so make sure you get this. I'm using that to just add some brightness and some harmonic kind of saturation to the high end on this vocal sample here, make it stand out a little bit more. And that's it, really, just simple touches like that, you know. There's these choir parts here. I've used panning here to create a little bit more width as well, because this, for me, working on these instruments on this beat was all about creating space for the vocal. The vocal is the most important part of this, really, along with the bass and the drums. But you know, the vocal, I wanted it to sit like slap bang in the middle, so I wanted the instruments to really be wider and placed outside of the speakers, and the vocal to be inside of it. It was already a really nice arrangement and really well produced, and that's the thing, you know, when you're mixing a beat, an instrumental, it really depends how well it was produced, arranged, and mixed originally by the engineer or the producer that actually made the beat, you know. And in this case, it was really well produced. So shout out to the producer, man, it's Cooler, and you know, he provided me with a really good kind of beginning on this. And then it was just a case of, okay, what can I add to just take this, just add this kind of extra 10, 20%, and also make it fit around the vocals. The other thing I've done here, as you'll see, there's quite a few plugins here, well, 4 plugins here on the actual instruments bus. So all the instruments on this beat output to this track stack here, or this bus, this instruments bus. And on that, we have a few things. So first of all, I've used the MoTT. I'm just at 10%. This is kind of an expander. It just brings everything up. Very subtle on 10%, but I'll exaggerate it so you can hear it too. Yeah, so really subtle, but as you heard when I exaggerated it, it's really kind of compressing everything together. Just makes it more, I don't know, it just kind of adds some glue that I like. So I use that quite often for that reason. And I'm using the Vitamin or the Vitamin by Waves to add some nice crisp high end here. After that, I'm using this SSL Fusion Stereo Image plugin, and this is just to add even more space and width to these instruments. As I said earlier, I want the vocal to sit in the middle and I want these to sit kind of outside of it. So this just helps with that, as well as kind of the panning and other things that I've done. But let's see if this, if we can pick a part where this is really making a difference here. Yeah, so you'll have to be listening on really good speakers or on headphones to really get a sense of what that's doing. It is pretty subtle, even though the dials are, you know, quite high up on this. It is a pretty subtle effect, but it really does help. After that, I'm using the R compressor. Side chained into this is the kick. So every time the kick hits, it's ducking down on the instruments a little bit, again, just to kind of create that slight little pumping effect. So it goes along with the rhythm of the kick here. Really not audible when everything's in, but it just hopefully helps for the kick to just push through and punch through that a little bit more. And I like to do that on a lot of my mixes, you know, sometimes more subtle, sometimes less subtle. It just depends on what we're going with. So that's pretty much the instrumental. I didn't go through these kind of effect shots and things like that. These are just various things throughout the song to create those impacts. You know, various little touches like that, that's all on the producer. The only thing that I added was this sweep here. So I added that on certain drops that I wanted to create even more impact on, but as you'll hear, there's plenty of impact on most of these drops already from the producer. So that's really it for the instrumental. I know I didn't go into crazy detail like I usually do or like I have done on some of my other videos, and let me know if you have any questions about anything I've said, but I really wanted to get to the vocals because that's kind of what most people come here for, I think. But yeah, the main things is getting the bass to hit right, getting the samples and the instruments to kind of sit in the right space in the stereo field and frequency wise as well. And then obviously, as usual, making sure the drums kick and hit correctly too. So yeah, that's the instrumental, and now we'll get onto the vocals. So we'll move on to the vocals now, and obviously as this is a freestyle, this is just one long verse, one long rap verse all the way through the song, and this is the most important part of the song to get right. So most of my energy went on getting these sounding right. Now there's only one layer of vocals on this. The reason there's two channels here is because these overlap slightly, so there's more than one take, but it's just one layer. So these are treated exactly the same, and all these other things you see here, these channels, are all just effects and things that I added on by cutting things out of this and pasting them up. So we're going to get to them later on. So I'm going to mute them for now, and I'm just going to play part of the verse here that we haven't kind of heard yet, so you can get a feel for what's happening, and then we'll look at how I process these, and then we'll get to the effects as well. So if you're only interested in the effects, skip ahead in the chapters if you want to see how I dealt with all these effects here, but this is for the main actual kind of mix, the main processing of the vocals here.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror it looks like chest day, but in all fairness I just did squats. In your mirror you trust in flesh, but same way how you ain't got no guts. I used to just wanna bust some them man show now to write without precision. So you could be the top MC these days, doing everything good except how you're spitting. I pre how you did it, I reached out, I couldn't believe how delivered, I freaked out a bit. Man, I popped off and then I dropped off and then I came back with flames that could smoke out the house you live in. This long, they ain't never seen me this strong, and it's all.
Okay, so hopefully that gives you a taste of what's going on here. As you hear, it's a very loud vocal, very upfront, and that's what I wanted for this. So I'm going to take everything off and show you what I did. We'll start from around here. Okay, so the raw vocal, let's play that to begin with.
Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror it looks like chest day, but in all fairness I just did squats.
So a well-recorded vocal, very well recorded, but as you hear, sounding very raw right now. Now the first thing I added here was the RX mouth declick. And this is just literally, as it says on the tin, basically it's taking out any little slight clicks and pops in the vocal that's coming from the artist's mouth. And there wasn't a lot on this, but I like to use this on most of my tracks, to be honest with you, just to kind of clean them up.
Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked.
And this has no side effects on the quality of the vocal. It doesn't do anything like a sort of denoiser would or anything like that. So I love to use that. And we've got the first de-esser in the chain. And if you watch my videos a lot, then you'll know that I use this de-esser on pretty much every song I mix.
Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you just this once, excuse my language, car. Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this. Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie. Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this.
Just taking off the initial S's, you know, really not doing too much. Just taking off those initial kind of sharp S's before we go into the compression and everything. And we've got the first EQ in the chain, and this is Pro Q4 by FabFilter, and this is literally just rolling off the really lows down here, taking down a little bit of the kind of rumble in the 200 range, but at the same time I didn't want to take out all the body of the vocal, of course. And then we're just boosting slightly here with a high shelf above kind of 6-7K.
Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror it looks like chest day, but in all fairness I just did squats. In your mirror you trust in flesh, but same way how you ain't got no guts.
So no, not a massive effect from that. We've got some other EQs coming up, which are adding more kind of source or vibe to it. But yeah, that was just the first one to just kind of tame any areas. And I like to do kind of corrective EQ like that first before we go into our compressor. And then we're using this for the main compressor and also a little bit of EQ. This is the SSL 4KE. And I really like this because it's got such a nice sound in EQ and compression. And we also have a little bit of kind of mic preamp saturation on here.
Just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror it looks like chest day, but in all fairness I just did squats. In your mirror you trust in flesh, but same way how you ain't got no guts.
So on the EQ here, we're adding a little bit of high end, adding a little bit of mid, reducing that little bit of lower mid. And then in the low end, I'm actually doing a boost here. Now this looks like quite an unusual move because we just removed some of the kind of 200 and then I'm adding back in at 150, but I just liked it. I felt like the vocal just needed that little bit more body. And doing this boost down here, I don't know, it just added some nice weight with the vocal on this particular plugin, so I like that. And then, as I said, we're adding a little bit of mic preamp saturation here. And then we're compressing over here on a ratio of 4. I think we're doing about, I don't know, 6 to 10 dB here of reduction. Only goes to 10 when it really kind of hits the high points.
Look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and...
Yeah, so mostly around 6 dB of reduction there, so not too heavily compressing. It's hitting the 10 at times as well. Then we'll come over here to the bus. So all of these tracks here are contained within this track stack here or this vocal bus here. So they all output to the same bus. And on that bus, as you'll see, there's more processing. So I've done the channel processing there, and then we've got more processing here, and we've got the sends on this bus as well. And that's how I like to work generally, and particularly on this song. That's how I did it. So I'm going into virtual mix rack. With this, we're doing more compression, a little bit more EQ, and then that's just a trimmer on the end. That's not doing anything. That's just to see my kind of output level.
Look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror it looks like chest day, but in all fairness I just did squats. In your mirror you trust in flesh, but same way how you ain't got no guts.
Yeah, so you see this is really bringing it much more in your face. The compression is really helping to kind of push the vocal forward. Attack is pretty slow on this, but with a fast release. And again, it's doing around 5 or 6 dB of reduction.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train...
Not a massive amount of reduction, but enough to just really push the vocal forward. And then as you see here, we're adding a little bit of high end. Slight touch of mid-range as well. Pretty subtle, but you see it just adds some nice air to the vocal.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked.
But it's getting a little bit harsh there with all this kind of high end that we're adding. It's getting a little bit harsh, so we go into another de-esser here. And this is the E2 de-esser, which comes in the slate bundle. And we're doing quite a bit of de-ess in here.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror, it looks like chest day, but in all fairness, I just did squats. In your mirror, you trust in flesh, but...
Yeah, so really helping to control the vocal and tame it. And then we're going into the Pro MB, which is a multi-band compressor. Now, this step is not like essential, and I'm not doing a whole lot. It looks like a lot, but it's not too much, you know, adding a little bit of high end here, but controlling it with the compression. Slight touch here, 1 dB of mid-range boost, and then just catching any kind of high parts of the low end there with the compression.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror, it looks like chest day, but in all fairness, I just did squats. In your mirror, you trust in flesh, but same way, how you ain't got no guts. I used to just wanna...
So for me, it's just bringing out the vocal nicely, you know, with the reduction in the S's that we just did with the de-esser. It was getting a little bit lispy, so I'm adding a little bit of that back in, and that's how I like to do it. It's kind of like a push and pull. You know, we boost the high end, then we tame it with the de-esser, and then we bring it back up overall once the vocal has been de-essed. And that's generally how I like to do it. Many different methods, but, you know, this method works for me. After that, I wanted to add some grit and some saturation to the vocal. So we used the FabFilter Satin, and I really like this plugin for this purpose. So I'm splitting this into 2 bands here. We've got above and below 600. So this is the kind of high mids and the highs, and this is the low mids. And we're doing similar things on each one, but slightly different.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror, it looks like chest day, but in all fairness, I just did squats. In your mirror, you trust in flesh, but same way, how you ain't got no guts. I used to just wanna bust and gal to go nuts just like pistachios, but now I just worship God and I wanna look big whilst wearing baggy clothes. I watched the bro break down bricks and then got coins, he was coming like...
So you see when I boost that up, it gets a little bit too distorted, but I wanted to kind of, we're adding the distortion and then we're pulling it back with the mix knob down here. So I think this just kind of adds that little bit of grit and aggressiveness to the vocal that I wanted.
I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked.
I was pretty happy with where the vocal was sitting at this point, so I took the song away, listened to it in a few different environments, and I ended up coming back and thinking, it needs a little bit more air to it, a little bit more saturation in that high end, just to add that little bit of glisten and brightness in the high end. And this is what I used for that. This is the Ozone Exciter, and there's plenty of different things you could have used for this, but I used a little bit of tape saturation above 7K here. You know, the mix is down here, so it's not too much, but let's see what this is doing.
No guts. I used to just wanna bust and gal to go nuts just like pistachios, but now I just worship God and I wanna look big whilst wearing baggy clothes. I watched the bro break down bricks and then got coins, he was coming like Mario. You're like me, you're not bad, your brethrens are bad. You should really put down that bally, bro. See this?
Yeah, so just adding that little bit of nice high-end glisten on there, as I say. Final little bit of processing on this is this Oxford inflator, and I sometimes like to add this to the end of my vocal chain just to kind of push things up even further, and it adds a little bit of expansion in the vocals, and again just pushes them in your face even more. And it's just on 23% here. The curve's pretty low as well, so it's not massively dramatic, but it just adds a little bit of level in a nice way that I like.
Got no guts. I used to just wanna bust and gal to go nuts just like pistachios, but now I just worship God and I wanna look big whilst wearing baggy clothes. I watched the bro break down bricks and then got coins, he was coming like Mario. You're like me, you're not bad, your brethrens are bad. You should really put down that bally, bro. See this?
So that's the main processing done on the vocal, and the only other things to mention is these 2 sends. So I've got a slight slap delay here on bus 21, and then I've got a small reverb as well. I didn't want to add too much wetness, too many delays, reverbs to this vocal. I just wanted it really clean, in your face and straight. And then we used obviously these things here to kind of add the source on certain parts rather than over kind of a blanket over the whole thing. So let's take a look at this slap delay here.
But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's fucked. A boy said just because you bang gym and you train in the ring, keep something tucked. In my mirror, it looks like chest day, but in all fairness, I just did squats. In your mirror, you trust in flesh, but same way, how you ain't got no guts.
Yeah, so I'm using the repeater plugin here for the slap delay, and it's on this CLA-ish tape slap preset, but I've also made some changes here. So I've put the spread on, so it's kind of creating a stereo effect on the slap delay. Put it down to 149. Also done some high pass and some low pass on here. Let me play this soloed. Then it's just being squashed the hell out of on this compressor here. Don't know why, I just like the way it sounded. And then I'm removing some of the low mids as well from this. Just don't want anything mudding up the chain, you know. So I thought that sounded nice. It's pretty low. It's pretty sort of like when everything's in the mix, you don't hear it too much.
I used to just wanna bust some gal to go nuts just like pistachios, but now I just worship God and I wanna look big whilst wearing baggy clothes. I watched a bro break down bricks and then got coins, he was coming like Mario. You're like me, you're not bad, your brethrens are bad. You should really put down that bally, bro.
So I was muting and unmuting there the slight reverb that I've added as well on these vocals. So this is a plate reverb in First Week's Classics, and it's on a pretty short decay time. Some minor EQ touches here. And then after that, I'm kind of EQing out some of the high end and some of the rumble as well from that.
Guts. I used to just wanna bust some gal to go nuts just like pistachios, but now I just worship God and I wanna look big whilst wearing baggy clothes. I watched a bro break down bricks and then got coins, he was coming like Mario. You're like me.
Yeah, so it's kind of audible when we're listening to it in a cappella, but with the track, it's not so audible. So let's do that now. Let's play this with the track, and we'll select a different part of the song down here, so you can hear the final vocals with the sends in the context of the song.
I've got bars and bangers on tap. I glorify God in my tracks, cause he kept my integrity intact. Facts. And if we compared slips, I bet I pay most of your wage in tax. I done my time in the call center, I don't feel no shame if they call me back. But it's hard trying to make it out, it don't matter if you shell down 1,000 rhythms. I showed them that I got the hardest bars, but there ain't no rhythm in the algorithms. Forgive me if I'm not like them man show now to write without precision. So you could be the top MC these days, doing everything good except how you're spitting. But you did it, I reached out, I couldn't believe how I delivered, I freaked out a bit. Man, I popped off and then I dropped off and then I came back with flames that could smoke out the house you live in. They never see me this strong and it's all down to God how I found my spirit. Like the blade can be just like everyone else's, it's breathtaking because of how you swing it.
So that's the main processing of the vocal. Now we're going to take a look at all these effects that I added here to really spice up this mix. Okay, so we've covered the main processing of this vocal, but as I mentioned before, because this is just one layer, we have no ad-libs, we have no BVs, so we have nothing to kind of add impact or spice or sauce to these vocals. I thought it would be a good idea to kind of add a few effects and touches, reverbs, delays, reverse reverbs, low pitch vocal effects at various parts throughout the song. Now it's important to pick the right parts, the right words, and the right kind of transitional points of the song to do this on. You can't go crazy, and some of these I am going a little bit crazy, but some of them are for the purposes of the video, just to kind of demonstrate what is possible and what can be done with these various effects. You know, as I'm going through this process, generally I'm doing a lot of experimenting, so I'm chopping bits out, I'm copying and pasting them up, and just hearing how they sound. So anyway, let's get into it. You'll see here, I've got a few channels with different things on them. I've got 2 reverse reverbs, a low pitch vocal, a reverb end, which is like a reverb throw, like an extended reverb for the end of certain words or phrases. And then I've got 2 delay throws. One is 1/16 and one is 1/4. So that's the speed. So this one's like a super fast one, which almost resembles a reverb. And this one is a more kind of extended delay throw, which is much more audible as a delay. Now, what I've done with these channels is basically created duplicates of the main vocal channel here up to these. So as you'll see as I'm going through these, the first 3 or 4 plugins in the chain of these is the same as this main vocal here. You know, they've got a de-esser, they've got compression and an EQ. So I won't go through what these first few things are in any of these. Refer back to when I was mixing this. If you haven't seen that part, refer back to that to know the kind of main processing, but it's basically general de-essing, EQ and compression. It doesn't really even matter too much what you've done with that, because the purpose of these is what comes after, such as the delays and the low pitch effect and things like that. So anyway, let's dive in. We'll start here with the kind of main drop of the song. You'll see how I've used 3 different things. So I've got a low pitch vocal on the kind of last line, and then I've got a reverb ending kind of tail, and then I've got this fast delay here as well.
All of my wins have paid for my bills. All of my failures made me the man. I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this.
So that's one of the main ones there. We'll dive into a few more here.
Bad, your brethrens are bad, you should really put down that valley, bro. See this street talk stuff, some weak talk stuff when it's broken men with trauma. I don't trust what you say about money, con millionaires don't roll with the poorer. I was in a pub somewhere with the lads when Harry Kane should have put Sterling through. I checked the stats and streams on Friday, looks like man I got earnings due. Spotify stats, prove what you've got. Twisted pennies taught me that you try be everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't ask me what I got from music, I've got I done my time in the call centre, I don't feel no shame if they call me back. But it's hard trying to make it out.
Okay, so hopefully that gives you a taste of what they are. The main one that you're probably hearing is the low pitch vocal, so maybe we'll start with that. So as I mentioned, all the things are exactly the same. It's just a de-esser, an EQ, and a compressor. That's doing the kind of main processing just to kind of get the vocal to a point where I'm happy with the actual vocal. And then after that, we add the effects. So on the low pitch vocal, we're using this meta pitch. You can use anything really. You know, I used to use Little Alter Boy by Sound Toys. You can even use the stock plugins in your DAW for this as well. Anything that will give you kind of 12 semitones pitching down. I like to leave the formant slightly higher, but even this can go down to 12 as well if you want it. I'll play this in solo and just show you. I've also added a little reverb as well on the end of this, but that's not really essential. I just like to kind of smooth it out.
As if the last freestyle wasn't enough.
Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't time in the call centre, I don't feel no shame if they call me back.
Don't feel no shame if they call me back.
So this plugin here is doing all the heavy lifting on this.
Don't feel no shame if they call me back.
Don't feel no shame if they call me back.
Very simple. I'm also doing some widening and some drive here. This kind of adds a little bit of saturation and also kind of puts it outside of the speakers compared to the main vocal, which stays in the center. So I think that adds a nice effect.
Don't feel no shame if they call me back.
So I've added this at various points, and this is kind of before drops mostly that I've done this, so to add more impact before a drop. So let me demonstrate that here.
The man, I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my I done my time in the call centre, I don't feel no shame if they call me back. But it's hard trying to make it out, it don't matter if...
So those kind of really exclaimed parts of the verse where there's a drop straight after it, I think this works really well.
Just like everyone else's, it's breathtaking because of how you swing it. So I came out swinging, I've been in the...
So pretty much all of them have been used for that. It's that impact, you know. Now in combination with that, you'll see that there's a couple of other things going on below. But below all of them is this reverb end channel. Again, same processing, de-esser, compression, and EQ. And then I've used this for the effect on this. So this is the Valhalla Shimmer, but really you can use any reverb for this, which has got the ability to have quite a long decay time on it. And I just like the way this one sounds, but I use a few others as well on other songs, but I like this one.
Millionaires don't roll with a borer. I was in a pub somewhere with a lad, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language.
So again, I'm using it to create a transition on a lot of these parts.
I'm Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language. The call centre, I don't feel no shame if they call me back. But it's hard trying to make it out.
So it's kind of back, you know, it's kind of sending it out there.
The call centre, I don't feel no shame if they call me back.
You know, it kind of just extends the last word out kind of into space, if you get me. But I just really like it. I think with and without it, you'll hear a big difference. So let's play this part in the song with and without this.
Home of the brave, rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, home of the brave, rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't...
It's pretty subtle, you know, it's not really loud, but in conjunction with this delay, which I'm going to show you now, together they add a really nice effect. So for this 16th note delay here, again, same things on the channel, but then I've added this chroma tape here to I've kind of made this lo-fi. So I've got this chroma tape, which is just kind of adding like a tape distortion, a kind of lo-fi effect. got the speed down at 7.5 and added some flux here. I've also added a slight slap delay. So this has actually got a slap delay on it before it goes into the delay. But this is not essential. You know, I'll play with and without that, but you'll hear that it's not making a huge difference. And then I'm using H delay here by Waves again. By the way, links will be in the description for all the Waves plugins that I use in this project. So this H delay here, as I say, it's on a 16th note, it's on a ping pong, it's on lo-fi setting, a little bit of modulation. So I've just messed around with this, high pass and low pass. I've turned this analog down because this just adds noise. So I always turn that down. Quite a lot of feedback because it's such a fast delay. Let me play this in solo and show you what it's doing.
Bang but look. Bang but look.
So let me play this without the chroma tape on it and see if you hear the difference.
Bang but look. Bang but look.
Very minor, if any difference really. That was just helping me to just kind of get a taste for kind of more of a lo-fi effect on there. I've also put a reverb on the end of this just to smooth it out a little bit, down at 30% here.
Bang but look. Bang but look. Bang but look. Bang but look.
So in with the vocals in a cappella.
The home of the brave, rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie, all this shit's Kane should have put Sterling through. I checked the stats and streams on Friday. Looks like, man, I got earnings due. Spotify stats say the music's global. Few countries I've been burning through. So I guess that it means there's a couple of euros, dollars, and sterling too. Some of these boys been...
So on this part here, as you'll see, I've automated this and turned it down on this part. It's not supposed to be too audible on parts like this. It's just kind of... It's kind of providing a little bit of source for where there would be an ad-lib, maybe, you know, because there wasn't any ad-libs on this. It's just kind of adding that little bit of depth and as I say, a little bit of spice to the mix where an ad-lib or a background vocal may do it in other cases.
Like the blade can be just like everyone else's. It's breathtaking because of how you swing it. It's why I came out swinging.
As you see, I've used that one in conjunction with the verb end here a lot throughout the song, and I think together they accompany each other nicely.
Mario, you're like me, you're not bad, your brethrens are bad. You should really put down that bally, bro. See, this street talk stuff, some weak talk stuff when it's broken men with trauma. Kane should have put Sterling through. I checked the stats and streams on Friday. Looks like, man, I got earnings due. Spotify stats say the music's global. Few countries I've been burning through. So I guess that it means there's a couple of euros, dollars, and sterling too. Some of these... So you could be the top MC these days, doing everything good except how you're spitting. I pre how you did it, I reached out. I couldn't believe how delivered, I freaked out a bit.
And then when you put that in with the low pitch vocal as well.
My failures made me the man. I'm from Leicester, home of the brave. Rigged it to blow, so I'm back with a bang. But look, just this once, excuse my language, car can't lie. Ooh.
You know, it really adds that kind of, it's kind of sucking you in ready for that drop.
I done my time in the call centre. I don't feel no shame if they call me back. But it's hard trying to make it out. My spirit, like the blade can be just like everyone else's. It's breathtaking because of how you swing it. It's why I came out swinging. I've been in the gym like I'm...
Yeah, so really nice. I just think it adds so much flavor and just spices up quite a usual and straightforward verse. You know, if we didn't have these, the verse would just play through and it would just kind of be the same. So this kind of adds dynamics as well. It keeps the listener's attention, you know, and it just adds some ear candy for the listener. The other thing here is this quarter note delay. So very much similar to the other delay that I just showed you. Pretty much exactly the same, but obviously it's on quarter note here rather than 16th. Slightly less feedback as well because it's a slower delay. You will want less feedback so it's not carrying on for so long. And then I'm using the Valhalla Shimmer reverb on the end of it as well. Let's play this in solo and then we'll look at it in the context.
I don't trust what you say about money, con millionaires don't roll with a borer. I was in a pub somewhere with the lads where you're a little man like you got throw those hands. I'm at the monkey bars on the park. You're a little man like you got throw those hands. I'm at the monkey bars on the park. Coming like say I'm an orangutan. Everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't ask me what I got from music. I've got bars and bangers on.
So quite ear catching this one. This one's not as subtle as the previous one. So I've only used it, as you see, 3 times throughout the song. And, you know, it does catch the ear quite a bit. I probably could have turned it down a little bit more in certain places. But I think it's really nice. And again, in conjunction with some of the other effects here, you'll see how cool this can sound.
daughter. I don't trust what you say about money, cause millionaires don't roll with the poorer. I was in a pub somewhere with the lads when Harry Kane should have put Sterling through. Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't ask me what I got from music, I've got bars and bangers on tap. Man, you ain't gonna throw those hands, you're a little man like you got throw those hands. I'm at the monkey bars on the park, coming like say I'm an orangutan.
So the last thing I added to this track was these two reverse reverbs here. Now I think this one is a shorter one, that's why it's on a separate channel. But for this one, I've only used it twice in the song. There's not too many gaps and kind of points in the song where I could have used this. Sometimes I like to do more, but in this song, I think there's only three. Yeah, there's three total reverse reverbs and there's two on this track. This one is just kind of leading into the start of the verse and it's really quiet.
Listen. Alright, Joey, you know I say bless on a listen. Alright, Joey, you know I'm a joker.
So because that one's so subtle, we'll focus on this one down here, which is the same, but just a lot louder.
Try be everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't ask me everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough.
Yeah, so because you got that gap there with the mug, and then we got that, you know, that kind of build up to the word greedy. I think that really works there. So what did I do for this? So again, same DSO, same compressor, same EQ, and then we've got this Space Designer plugin, which comes standard with Logic, and this has the ability to click this reverse button here. So yeah, really as simple as that. All I've done is come over here, cut out the word greedy, so I would have blown up my waveforms like this, cut this, copy and pasted it up to the reverse reverb channel, put this reverb on there, set my time of how long I want it to run for, and then press this reverse button. And this requires some moving around. You know, you're going to have to shift this around to get it in the right place, you know, so I'll listen to it in solo and kind of adjust it. So you hear if I put this too early, then it will end too soon.
Everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle was cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last.
So it's about right there, you know, I might go in and perfect that a little bit more, but it's about right there. So you want that to end bang on where the word starts. I mean, sometimes you can have it end before the word starts and leave that little space. I know sometimes that's a cool thing to do as well, but for this one, I left it like that. So that's literally it, you know, that's the main thing that I've used for this reverse reverb. But then I've also put the tremolo plugin on there, which is just making it pan from speaker to speaker. Obviously, you can do this manually by automating your pan knob, but I liked it like this.
You'll end up a mug. Greedy.
So if I turn this off, it will just be down the middle.
Cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if.
It just helps it to start on one side and kind of sway over to the other. And then I've also put this slight reverb on the end of it to just kind of add a little bit of a tail to it. So that's really it with that reverse reverb. Let me play it in context with the rest of the song.
Twisted pennies taught me that you try be everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy, as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't ask me what I got.
Really cool. And then we've got this one here. Now this one's a lot harder to hear. It's kind of low in the mix. And because there's a lot going on at this point in the song, it's not as audible, but you'll hear it hopefully.
I serve an overlord of my own, but he is not dressed in a hood as a skeleton. So if you're wondering how I came back from the dead, it ain't down to.
Let's solo this stuff.
Of my own, but he is not dressed in a hood as a skeleton. So if you're wondering how I came back from.
Yeah, so really subtle, hardly audible when everything's in. It's the same principle, but I've actually made the length shorter here, so you can use this knob here to just adjust how long you want it to be dragging in before the line hits, you know.
But he is not dressed. So if you're wondering how I came back from the dead, it ain't down to.
I think because all these other things are going on here at the same time, this one's really hard to hear, but it just helped with the transition.
I serve an overlord of my own, but he is not dressed in a hood as a skeleton. So if you're wondering how I came back from the dead, it ain't down to chakras and magic. It was not down to making a wish after gathering all the Dragon Balls on the planet.
Yeah, the only other thing here to show you is these things that are muted here because I wasn't too sure about them. I didn't actually use them in the mix, but I wanted to show them for the purposes of the video. So this is a stutter. And all I've done to create this is, again, duplicated the main vocal channel, brought them down here. I've panned one to the left and one to the right. I've also done some kind of high pass filtering as well on it, so there's no low end coming through. Yeah, and then I've just literally cut and pasted this down onto these channels twice. So I've done 1 and 2 like that, but put them onto these channels, and that creates this sound.
You'll end up a mug. Greedy as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Taught me that you try be everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy as if the last freestyle wasn't enough.
So as I say, because I've got this reverse reverb here as well, it's not really necessary in this space, and you know, it was the only one in the whole song, so I decided to leave it in the end, but I wanted to keep it in muted here just for the purposes of the video. So let me play this from back here, and you'll hear a few of these effects happening all kind of in this 8-bar period here.
Millionaires don't roll with the poorer. I was in a pub somewhere with the lads when Harry Kane should have put Sterling through. I checked the stats and streams on Friday. Looks like, man, I got earnings due. Spotify stats say the music's global. Few countries I've been burning through. So I guess that it means there's a couple of euros, dollars and sterling too. Some of these boys been trapping for what? All that I've seen on your wrist is a cuff. When you spend your time improving, you do not need to prove what you've got. Twisted Pennies taught me that you try be everyone's cuppa, you'll end up a mug. Greedy as if the last freestyle wasn't enough. Don't ask me what I got from music. I've got bars and bangers on tap.
So I think that's adding a lot more sauce. If you go back to when I'm mixing just these vocals here, you'll see that it's a little bit plain without all of this, you know. And when I'm listening back to this without these, it sounds really plain to me now because I'm so used to hearing these little bits of sauce and spice in the mix. Now you'll notice if you're listening closely that there's also some kind of drum chops out in certain areas where these effects are, so that really helps as well. You know, pay attention to this when you're putting on these kind of effects onto your vocals to make them have even more impact and stand out even more. You can come up here and do chops, particularly from the snares and the hats. So I'll show an example here.
In your mirror you trust in flesh, but same way how you ain't got no guts. I used to just like me, you're not bad, your brethrens are bad. You should really put down that valley, bro. See the street talk stuff, so trust what you say about money, con millionaires don't roll with the poorer. I was in a pub somewhere.
So, you know, we've got this gunshot here, and it's kind of, you know, this transitional kind of effect here on the vocals and a couple of effect shots here. So cutting out these hats just before that really adds some more impact.
Money con millionaires don't roll with the poorer. I was in a pub somewhere with a...
So, you know, pay attention to that instrumental changes as well when you're adding these effects to your vocals, and it'll add even more impact. So yeah, hopefully that was clear. Feel free to drop any comments and any questions about that, because I know it's probably a lot of information. I've tried to keep these like as simple as possible. There's obviously way more you can do, and there's more things you can do to make these extra special. I didn't want to make them too complicated, and for me, for the most part, it works perfectly just like this. So guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something from it. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section below. Links to get in touch with me will be in the description, and also links to the song that we used in this video. Please drop a like on the video if you can. It really helps me with the algorithms. And if you like what you saw here, click the subscribe button, check out my other mix walkthroughs, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.